My guy, how are you doing, brother? How you doing?
What's up, man? How are you?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm getting here, man. It
Yeah,
took me a little minute. I was building this light, so it took me a second. I was trying to get some accent lighting going.
you look great, bro. You do. You're killing it.
By the way, man, what? I didn't see you. You cut your hair.
I did. I want to grow it all out together. I had it only at the top. And honestly, I didn't really like it, so I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
you're probably gonna end up looking like you, to be honest, with the curls and everything. Yeah, but I'm gonna grow it all out together, all at once. Um,
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to make sure it was like healthy from the start, kind of thing.
I hear you. I did
You
something
know,
similar, so I get what you mean. I actually did the method you were talking about. I did the top and then let the sides go.
there you go.
It just took a while.
Exactly.
You just gotta be patient.
I'll try. But yeah, thank you for jumping on. I appreciate you, brother.
Of
Really,
course.
thank you for giving us your time. And like I was saying today, we're talking about meditation, what it is, what it looks like, how to get started, how to build
Oh yeah.
consistency, stuff like that. So let's jump right in. Let me ask you, what's your experience with meditation? Have you tried meditation? Do you recommend it? And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me as always. Um, I've had a pretty good experience, I would say overall. I know for a lot of people, it can be a bit challenging trying to start. Um, I think from a lot of different reasons. I think in general, with the type of society we have and the lower attention span that people have, it makes it very difficult to practice something like meditation, which in therapy, we just call that like a mindfulness practice. It's just something that helps you be focused on your present. And so sometimes people have I think, general idea that you have to be sitting in a certain position or you need to be laid down or what have you. But I'm a believer in you can do it in a lot of different places. It just depends on if you're giving yourself the time necessary to really just kind of decompress and be focused on maybe your breathing or your surroundings or what have you. But to go more into detail about like how I got started, it actually started for me more or less when I was in grad school studying to be a therapist.
Mm.
And I had some other professionals and teachers who were telling me and recommending to a lot of the students to try something like that. Because as you can imagine, you've been to grad school yourself, it's very stressful, in addition to trying to manage your normal day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I think it's actually, if you are willing to put in the effort to create the repetitive process, it's actually very simple to do, and you can do it virtually anywhere. One of the greatest tools I have, and I use it, and I had other clients that I've had over time experiment as well, is this app called Insight Timer. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Okay. So
Put me on. Put
essentially
me
what,
on. Right.
okay. So it's, I'm a Android person, but I know it's on iOS as well. But essentially what it is it's a repertoire of different meditations. So you have specific ones that are just the traditional sit there, you set the timer for however long you want to be present for, and then, a gong can go off or whatever sound you want for that period of time, and then it goes off again. For a lot of people I know in the beginning, it's very difficult for them to do that because just sitting still for 10 minutes, I've been reported back to me that it feels like it's hours. So I don't necessarily recommend people start that way because I think it's kind of hard. And even me, it was a little challenging when I first did it that way. What's cool about Insight Timer is that, and by the way, this is not sponsored. This is just something I've used before. They have a lot of guided meditations, which I actually really like. I think guided is a good way to go. That's kind of how I got started when I was in school. Actually, we were in a class and the teacher made us sit for like 15 minutes, like to start the class, just to kind of like, hey, whatever you had going on at work, at home, before you come to class, so we can use your brain, we're going to hone in right now. And we would do that. And so that's been one of those great resources I've had. It's free. People usually like that. So it's a good resource. You can have it on your phone. You can use it anywhere. But again, the guided ones, really, really helpful because then you can focus on listening to people. For those of you that like podcasts or music or what have you, you can focus on listening to somebody's voice. And I take it a step further. When I have clients who are struggling with like particular emotions overwhelming them, you can actually listen, to guided meditations on a particular emotion. So if you're trying to overcome anxiety, they have guided meditations called Overcoming Anxiety, or
Ooh.
dealing with depression, things like that. Now, I'm not saying it's like a cure by any means, but it's trying to help you tackle the heart of what maybe that negative emotion is that you're struggling with. So I don't want to go on too much more, but essentially it's a great resource. You have it on your phone or your person. You can use it pretty much anywhere. And I would recommend starting with like a guided one, because I think for a lot of folks, it's very difficult to just sit still, even for 10 minutes.
I love that, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because I definitely have also had many coaching clients come to me and tell me I can't sit still for 5 minutes. Like, I can't just not play my thoughts, and it is challenging. I get it. When I first started meditating myself, I had a tough time kind of sitting and like just observing my thoughts. But I, just like you, I think when I started doing guided meditations, it was a really great way for me to get going, and kind of create that skill set, like really being more comfortable with just sitting with myself, sitting with my thoughts, observing, and eventually I was able to, like, kind of fade that out, from a standpoint, and like really just be able to do way longer. But I'm gonna check that out. Insight Timer, right?
Yes, Insight Timer, 2 words, super easy to find. I think it's just like a gong or something. That's the little icon when you search for it. But yeah, it's a valuable resource, man. I ask all of my clients to at least try it, because part of it is like, I speak about it in terms of trying to cope. And it's one of those skills. I try to utilize technology to a certain degree, because it's things that people typically have access to on them often. And sometimes, for example, if you're thinking about like a support system, when you're going through a hard day, you may not always have access to talk to somebody. Maybe they're at work, maybe they're in an emergency, what have you, and you might have to wait some time. So I'm big on trying to have some resources that the person can have access to virtually at any time. So that's why I like that particular platform. And like you said, you can start off guided and you can slowly fade off if you don't want to, or you can do that the whole time if you would like. But the purpose is just to have access to it and try to get into the practice of doing it fairly consistently. That's where you start to feel a bit of the change. And I think it's not a lot, to me, it's not a big ask to give yourself 10, 15 minutes a day. Like, I think everybody can spare that if you truly wanted to.
I agree. So I want to kind of piggyback on what you said also on doing meditation. You can really do it anywhere, or I feel like also a lot of people have specific idea of what meditation looks like. So I really wanted to see what your perspective was on, what meditation could look like. Because I know there's many different ways that meditation can look. But what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, and I will admit, I was one of those people too. When I first tried, I didn't, because it was foreign to me, number one. So I had no context for it. I had no idea, like, what is that? What does that even mean? What's the practice? So I will attempt a little bit during our conversation to try to like break down what I think it is to me, and how I try to explain it to other people. Because I think sometimes we kind of get lost in the clouds of trying to mystify it in some way. To me, it's basically a simple practice of giving yourself a certain amount of time on that particular day. And the whole purpose is about being present. So again, I use the term mindfulness. In therapy, we talk a lot about mindfulness practices, because in many cases, we are preoccupied, our thoughts and emotions are preoccupied on other things. Could be a relationship, job, children, any other random stress that comes into your life. And so the purpose is to be able to have a tool that you can lean on in times of need, right? So if you're feeling anxious, you can maybe do a meditation and feel a little less anxious after you're done. That would be an example. But in terms of where you could do it, right? Well, if we weren't on this call, I could do it here. Like, I could sit in this chair right now, just turn one on, close my eyes, and zone out. Whether I want to do it with no sound, like to just truly be with myself, or I want to listen to a guided one. I've done them before in my car while I was driving, not closing my eyes, of course, but just like having the guided one going, not trying to talk, and just focusing on what's being said to me, right? So I know some people have done it like on their lunch break. They might go sit in their car for like 10 minutes and just, lay their seat back and just kind of zone out, lay in your bed. You could totally do that. I have some clients, for example, when I'm trying to help them first get started, I suggest they do it before they go to bed. And let me explain why real quick. because a lot of times, again, talking about being locked into the technology, sometimes it's hard for them to wind down to actually sleep. So in my experience, meditation can be, it's not something that puts you to sleep, but it can put you in a more relaxed state of mind to make it easier to go to sleep. So maybe 15, 20 minutes before a bedtime, they might choose to like listen to something. And I found that based on their report, that it helps them sort of calm down a little bit more and make it a little bit easier to go to sleep. So that's a big benefit. So the simple answer is you could do it pretty much anywhere, hopefully in a safe way. But the idea of it is to just be focused in that moment on either listening, if you're listening to one, or yourself. A lot of people do like breath work. Just focus on your breathing. Or again, you can't have your eyes open. Focus on your surroundings. Look at different things out there and just focus on that. Don't try to think about anything else at that time. That's the purpose of being present. I do want to add one more quick little note. When you're trying to do it, it's very normal that thoughts still enter your mind. I have never had an experience where I had no thought in my mind. I've never had that experience. There's always something that comes up. This is my understanding. I think of it like we're in the ocean. Like I'm kind of sitting here, right? And my thoughts and my feelings are like these little waves that are kind of going past me. And my idea is to not go grab it and hold on to it. My idea is to continue to let it go past me. It comes, maybe I think about it for a second and I let it keep going. So I'm not trying to be attached to anything at that moment in time. I'm just trying to be focused on me in this moment, and whatever comes up, and it's okay. There's no pressure.
I love that. I love the emphasis that you put on the intention and the purpose of meditation. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when we're thinking about where or how or like we could go about meditation, we tend to forget what the purpose or the intention can be. When we have that clear intention that we're doing this to be present, not attached to any specific outcome. Like I'm going to do this to calm down. No, like I'm going to do this. Like no, like when you're so attached to a specific outcome, that's when a lot of people have a hard time staying present. Because if you're focused on an outcome, you're time traveling. You're focused in the future, and the whole purpose, the whole intention is to bring your attention back to the present moment. And from a scientific standpoint, that helps you lower your stress levels. That helps create feel-good chemicals and stuff like that. But also from just a mental health perspective, it allows you to kind of gain gratitude for what's around you, regardless of where you are. Like you could be in your bed, you could be in your car. I've done meditation in my break at work, multiple, and it really does help. It really does help. I've heard of, I don't remember who said this, but I've heard of this person who does a meditation every time they hit a red light, and it's brilliant.
Okay.
It's brilliant because many of us get really upset when we hit a red light. Me included.
That's a good example.
Me included. So that's a great time to, and again, please don't close your eyes in a place like that. But you don't have to close your eyes to meditate. You don't have to close your eyes to meditate. You can do it while your eyes open. And again, just looking around you, focusing on what's right in front of you, and like bringing it back to that present moment. And that's really going to calm down your nervous system and kind of bring some clarity to your brain as well.
Absolutely. I would even add one more thing to you talking about when you're driving. I don't know for anybody who does have to do like extensive driving to and from work or something like that. I would say even like when you're listening to a certain song, maybe one that you're just like very intentionally listening to, and maybe you're just kind of you're paying attention, you're still driving, but your mind is really trying to grasp the lyrics perhaps of what you're listening to. And then you're just sort of observing, of course, your rest of your environment. I consider that also meditation. I'm like you said, intention. I'm intentionally sitting here and trying to focus on this. And maybe that could be a minor distraction, but if I'm getting road rage, I'm getting stressed out because I'm driving, and that brings my energy down, I would say that's a net positive. And I think that that's a added benefit of doing any type of meditation.
That's a really good point. I agree. Again, bringing it back to like the different kinds of meditation, it really does boil down, in our opinion, to bringing it back to that present moment, kind of gaining access back to your body. Because many of us, we kind of go out of our body and start focusing on things that are outside of our control. And it can be really
Mm-hmm.
difficult for us to bring our attention back to the here and now. And I love that you mentioned the the wave example as well. Like something that I use
Oh, yeah.
I use with my kids when teaching them meditation is um, this idea of that basically we're a pond, right? And our emotions are fish in the pond.
Okay.
And the pond is literally just there, and the fish are swimming through it, and we're just letting them be. We're just allowing them to be, allow them to swim through us. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, regardless of how the fish swim, we're still the pond. Like nothing really changes. And another one that I also use that I like a lot is, and I think I've used in another episode is the we're the sky, and our thoughts and emotions are just clouds, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
you did.
yeah, and that's the same thing. Like that's something that I remind myself sometimes when I'm having a hard time concentrating or meditating. I remind myself I'm just this guy. It might be a storm right now, right? Especially when
Yeah.
life is happening and you try to sit down and like bring that tension back. Um, when you um, when you try to focus, it could be a storm. There could be clouds of everywhere. It could be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But remembering that we are the sky, it's a great way to remember that it'll pass. It's not going to be there forever. And if
Oh,
you're in a
yeah.
storm, if you sit there for long enough, the clouds will go away and eventually be a clear day, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
That that's a good example too. When you're talking about the emotions, I think sometimes we forget that even the most intense ones, remembering that they're temporary. Now, temporary doesn't mean like an hour. You know, temporary might mean a couple of days.
mm,
Temporary might mean a week, right? But to your point, if I'm intentionally trying to work through, process, and understand why I'm feeling the way that I am and trying to deal with it, then they will be temporary. I will give the caveat though, if we don't deal with it, then you're kind of making them permanent.
you're setting that time frame for sure. You're definitely setting that time frame. Yeah, and and that's why we talk about this a lot. But really doing that shadow work, really doing that inner work, through meditation, that's a really great way for us to connect with what's going on inside us, to really understand where our thoughts and emotions are coming from. And sometimes we don't understand where that's coming from, and that's okay. But we can at least take the time to observe them and find and gain control back, so we can decide to respond rather than react. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that if you watch other episodes, we talk about that a lot. Because we do live in this society where it's reaction, 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 and we're not taking the time to slow down, bring it back to the present moment, and respond instead. So,
Oh yeah. I would actually give a slightly just an interesting example of
I'm
again
ready.
another benefit I think, because
Mm,
it comes down to me, it comes down to helping you to build and us to build patience.
mm,
So let me give an
mm.
example.
Yes, sir.
So back to the attention side. So we know that because of the society that we live in, particularly with the younger generation, because I have a fair amount of clients who are like, let's say under 21,
Mm,
they grew up differently than I did, or probably you did. And so because of that, they're very much into switching off things very quickly, needing to be stimulated constantly, right? And I'm more old school. I like long form content, for example. I like to really digest something or read instead of only catching a video or something like that. Because of the society that we're in right now, and because things get sensationalized very quickly, I think it adds to the challenge of people reacting so much because they don't have the patience to really take in the full context of things as much. So instead of, you see like a 15-minute clip of something, and you're like, oh, that's terrible, and you make your snap judgment, right? You don't go and watch the longer clip. You don't go and watch the full length episode or whatever it was that was being shared to get the full gravity of it. Why? Because a lot of us don't have the patience to actually do that. So to me, another benefit of actually meditating is teaching us to be patient. Because for example, if you set that timer, I'll give you like something that I actually thought about when I first started. If you set that timer for 10 minutes, right? If you're thinking the whole time, man, when's it going to go off? When's it going to go off? When's it going to go off? It's going to feel like forever. Versus if you just like again, try to focus on breathing. I'm just going to focus on breathing right now. You find that the time tends to move on a bit more quickly. Not that time is actually moving more quickly, but our perception of time moves a bit more quickly. And if you do that repeatedly, you might find over time that you might be more patient. If you're stuck at that red light, you're probably not flipping out, cursing, screaming, whatever. Maybe it's a little easier to deal with that because it's easier to have gratitude. You get what I mean?
For sure, for sure. I love that you brought up, yeah, but I love that you bring up the idea of this is a patience practice. This is really, and both words are important. The fact that it's patience and practice. So just like a workout, you get better with consistent repetition. Like if you fall off from the gym, you're probably gonna have to go back a few steps. You're not gonna be able to lift the same amount of weight. It's the same thing. Like you get better with time. To give you a personal example, for like when I first started, I remember it was years and years ago. I tried meditation back when I visited my mom in Pennsylvania. I think like 6 years ago or something. And I had a tough time sitting down for 5-10 minutes. I had a tough time. It was challenging. It was definitely challenging. But the more that I do it, the more that I practice different kinds of meditation, I've been able to increase that time. I've done sensory deprivation tanks for 2 hours with no music, no sound, and being able to sit with my thoughts for 2 hours calmly, really practicing that patience. And I really want to emphasize the word practice because you really do get better, and it does get easier the more that you do it.
Absolutely.
So it really does go back to that practice and that consistency. And the best way to build consistency is to start small. I've known a lot of people who kind of want to jump right in. Okay, I'm going to start with a 30-minute meditation. Meanwhile, they're on TikTok doing 50-second clips.
No. That's the correlation right there that you're saying.
Right.
That is the correlation. If you, I would use that as a practical example. If you watch reels and TikToks like constantly and you can't even sit still and watch that, do not start 30 minutes. You will be frustrated immediately.
Exactly. That's exactly that's exactly my point. So I know that you mentioned before that a good time frame to start with is about 10-15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. I think that that's a great way to build that consistency, get that confidence, because when you do it, you're like, oh, I did it. Okay, let me do it again tomorrow. But if you're putting yourself in 30 minutes to an hour meditation or whatever, then you fall off or lose track or take your headphones off or whatever, it becomes it's punishing, right? So you don't really want to do it again. Like you feel like, oh, I can't do anything or whatever. Like, but the more that we start, and again, if you can't do 10-15 minutes, start with 2 minutes, start with 5 minutes. I've had people that are coached that scale it down. I'm like, start 5 minutes, see that you can do it. And then you can start increasing that time frame. So if you have never meditated, if you've never sat down with your thoughts at all, just to kind of like merge what I do is say, start with that 5-minute guided meditation. Like just start 5 minutes. YouTube has a million of them. You can literally look up a 5-minute mindfulness meditation, and you'll find a million. And the best ones are the ones that really focus on coming back to your body, focusing on your breath. I like body check ones as well. I don't know if you tried those where you kind of just body scans. Yeah.
I did one of those. I believe that platform has one too. I remember I took a class in grad school where we actually had to do that using progressive muscle relaxation. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I think I have an idea, but I haven't actually.
It might be what you're thinking of. It might just be like it's framed differently. But essentially, it's just you start depending on first it starts with how much time you have. So if you have like 10-15 minutes, you could probably, or actually I take that back, 15-20 minutes, you could probably do the whole body. But if you have short amount of time, you focus on a certain area. So maybe you just use your hand, or maybe you do like your arm, or maybe you do like your leg. The purpose is essentially you tense the muscles of that particular area, because it makes you very present focused, because obviously you have to sit there and intentionally like flex this finger, flex this finger, flex, and then you have to hold it. You don't just do it. You have to do it, hold for like 5 seconds, then go to the next one. And so basically if you do, like when you said body check, that's what came up for me. Then you're essentially doing the whole body, like including
Mm,
like squeezing your face,
right.
eyebrows, like mouth, jaw, flaring your nose, everything that you know how to move. And so that can be one of those cool ones that you can do. And I also wanted to add in there for anybody who's familiar with like an app like Duolingo, when you get those that track, of how many days you've done. Insight
Mm,
Timer also has one of those. So I find that is, encouraging the behavior, because you see
mm.
like, oh, I have a nice little history. I've been going, it'll say like, you've been meditating for 7 days straight, and you get like a little badge, like, yeah. So maybe
It,
encourage you to want to do more.
that's awesome. I love that. I love that. That's so powerful. Like kind of seeing,
Hmm.
oh, see, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I like that. That reinforcement is so powerful, and it really helps
Yes,
us to
sir.
gain that confidence. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that. And our phones can be really, damaging in many ways, but they can also, like you're saying, they can be an amazing tool. So kind of bringing that attention back to how am I using my phone? Because you can use it like RJ is saying, and use it to set a timer, to get a meditation tracker that helps you kind of build that skill set, because it is
Right.
really a skill set. Patience is a skill set. You do get better, but we do need to practice in order for us to get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to talk about the um, was it muscle? Can you say that?
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Progressive muscle relaxation. Yeah. So that actually 2 days ago, there's this video that I do with my kiddos. That's about like 3-4 minutes long. So if you're a parent, highly recommend doing this with your kiddos as well. But after class, like I'm a physical education teacher, so at the last 3 or 5 minutes, I used to calm down. And I found out about this video a few years ago, but it really is. It's called melting. You just literally Google melting on YouTube and you'll find it. And the
Okay.
video is exactly what you're describing. It literally has the kids pretend that they're frozen, like so. It goes down their entire body. So it starts with their
Okay.
face, freeze your shoulders, freeze your arms, hold them like really, really tensely, really, really, really tensely, and then melt
Hmm.
slowly, and then like melt the entire body, and then they do it again. And
Yeah.
that I've personally seen it, how powerful it is with my kids. I've done it myself multiple times, and it's really, really powerful. It really does help. It could also gives you that reminder of your own control over your body,
Yes.
over your
Yes.
body. You're like, oh wait, okay, so I actually do have control over this.
No,
Because
it's true.
yeah,
True.
but yeah, I love that. Is there anything that you would tell someone who has never who tries everything that we said and still having a hard time with meditating? Any advice that you give them that has helped you or has helped some of your clients, or that you think that
Yeah.
could, yeah.
I mean, so what I would do, and it really depends, obviously, because there's
Mm,
different situations why it doesn't work for somebody. I
yeah.
will tell you, actually, I think I have a client I'm going to do it with next week. Sometimes when they're getting started, they don't
Mm,
really know how to start. Like, I'm giving them instructions just like, we're talking about right now. But it's just like, sometimes it's hard because of the accountability aspect. Like
mm,
sometimes, you need somebody there, like a personal trainer, right? You need somebody there to kind of walk you through it. So sometimes I'll do it with them. I'll
mm,
literally, get on the call. Like if they're in person, we'll do it in my office. If they're virtual, we'll be looking like this, and we'll do it together. I'll turn the speaker on, make sure and then we go through it. Because part of it is the accountability. I think some
mm,
people, like, if they don't get like you mentioned earlier, the expectation.
mm.
I haven't mastered it already. It's 30 seconds. Why am I still thinking about these things? Like I've heard this all the time. I want to stop being upset. I'm angry right now. Is this going to help me stop being angry right now? It's not going to instantly, you can't microwave meditation, but what it can do, like we said earlier, if you practice a little more often, it can get easier to kind of lower the temperature, right?
Mm,
Cool you off. Because we talked about patience. I think to me, it's one of the most underrated skills, particularly nowadays.
yeah.
It was always important. I don't think anybody didn't think it was important. But I'm saying nowadays, I think it's even more paramount that everybody, because we all have to constantly do it,
Mm,
especially, when you're using technology or you're dealing with coworkers or colleagues, or if you're a parent with your child. There's so many instances, we have to practice. So Sometimes it's doing it with somebody who maybe is a little more seasoned to actually do it with you, because it helps increase the accountability, and maybe you actually start to feel something because they're doing it with you. Kind of having that camaraderie. Again, like if you were to go to the gym with somebody who goes more often, might increase that. Another thing is sometimes I try unorthodox ways. So we talked about doing it in silence. We talked about listening to a guided one. I mentioned music earlier. Music has been a good one for me. So for example, if I have like a young client, right? Like let's say 13 to 17, and they might be like, yeah, I don't really want to do all that. But what I'll do is like, all right, pull me up a playlist or show me some of the genres that you like to listen to, right? And maybe we'll find a track or a couple of tracks, depending on the amount of time we want to try for, right? And try to let that music be the guide. Like we were talking about in the car, right? Because usually that's a good one. Most people have at least one genre, one artist that you can pick and be like, as long as it's not, hopefully not death metal, you know, something, even that, I have nothing against it, but it's just, it's hard to kind of settle the spirit. It'll be easier to kind of put that on for that certain amount of time. Like, hey, so what we're going to do is we playing this one track, right? We're going to turn this track on. And from the minute it goes on, and then we'll set the parameters. Either we're going to close our eyes and we're going to focus on just like listening to the lyrics, or maybe we're going to just look at each other, or we're going to find something in the room, or we're going to look at that. But the point is, that's the intentionality. And then I found also for a lot of folks that usually helps, and then they can kind of graduate or scale up into a guided one, and then maybe scale up, and then after that into doing it completely silent. So just it kind of depends on where the person is starting from and how willing are they. So sometimes you got to kind of be a little more unorthodox to get the hooks in them, so to speak.
I like that. I like those are good, really good examples. I don't think I've tried that with the music yet. It sounds fun. That sounds fun.
When you get young people, yeah, man, it's hard, you know. And
Yeah,
I'm saying it because like it's not as hard for me. I'm very patient, so I can do that. But
right. I
understand it's a bigger ask for them, and so you know you got to try to think outside the box to try to reach them. So that's something that I've tried, and I'm like, you know, sometimes it helps to kind of get them to open up a little bit, and again, just being a little more present. Because if you find something that they like already, then it's basically we're just leveraging that to accomplish the goal that I want for you. If I want you to get good at meditating and the purpose is helping you be more present centered, and I take a song that you like and we do it for the amount of time that I'd want to do it for anyway, I'm secretly winning. I'm secretly doing the thing that I wanted us to do anyway.
Yeah, there you go. And you're still making that behavior fun. You're reinforcing that behavior. So it's not like a chore. It's like, oh, actually I get to listen to a song that I like. Cool.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like a chore, because that's when it becomes a little harder, when you're kind of forcing yourself to do it. Make it fun. Have fun with it. Play around. See what you like. What ways you like. You might not like the silent meditation. You might not like the guided meditations. So play around. Find out.
Try different stuff.
Try different stuff.
Try nature sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know about you all who are listening, but I think being mindful of maybe your musical taste. Sometimes I'm in a mood. Like sometimes I want to meditate to hip hop. Sometimes I want to meditate to smooth jazz. Sometimes I want to meditate to absolutely nothing. So maybe it depends on my mood. Maybe I want to be in a more emotional state of mind. So I want to listen to music that caters to that kind of keeps me locked in that way. But again, it's more about the time and then being intentional about setting aside that time. So maybe if I have in my calendar, you know, there's 15 minutes here, this is when I'd like to do it, and then give it that shot. And then even if it doesn't work, you know, then trying a different approach, like we said. If guided didn't work or silent didn't work, maybe that's not the best way. I would say guided is a great entry point. If that didn't work, then maybe utilize something like music could help. I know some people, once you take it a step further, you start going out into nature. Maybe you go to the park, you get the towel, you lay under the tree. That's when you're really getting locked in, because you're like, you know what? I just want to be. You know, you say stuff like that. I just want to be. And if I'm outside, all I hear is like I don't know if for anybody who's maybe never done this before, but there's actually a lot of sounds that I think we don't pay attention to or we take for granted.
Yeah.
But if you were to just lay one day, like I don't know where everybody lives, but hopefully on a cooler day. But if you just laid under like a tree, even if it was just for like 15, 20 minutes, you might be shocked at what you hear.
It's awesome. It's really powerful. I think that some of the best meditations is when you have that chance to like go in nature and like really kind of connect with the rest of the world. Because when you live in the city,
Yeah.
it can be challenging finding that rhythm. But when you go
Oh
into
yeah.
nature, you can really feel like, I'm part of the universe. Oh, that's right. Like, oh, that's right. I'm
It's true.
actually am nature myself. Like that's powerful. And yeah, I've done a lot of meditations in nature. Like living here in Arizona, there's mountains everywhere. I love just
Hmm.
jumping on a mountain peak and kind of just letting the wind hit me and everything like that. Or finding a creek or a river or a lake, putting my feet in
Yeah.
and meditating. Another
Absolutely.
way, kind of just finding that flow. It's really fun,
Hmm.
and to also piggyback on what you're saying on like kind of helping the younger generations gain that confidence and gain that skill set. Something that I've done
Yeah.
personally. I worked with this boy. He was around 11, 12 years old. So that age is pretty challenging to stay
Yeah.
focused. He loved WWE, so he had a lot going on.
There you go.
And one of the things that we did, and I do myself sometimes too, if I feel like I'm not being present or if I'm being too caught up on a specific outcome, basically too attached to
Hmm.
something. It's the 5 cents check. It's what we called it. And that's a skill that I've gathered from psychology and a lot of different people use it. But the way that I used it with my kids, it was basically we would do 5 cents check. We would do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So we would start 5 things that you can see, and we will sit down, and that gives
Hmm.
you that structure to know, because we're so focused on the future. When you already have that structure, you don't have to worry about it, because you still have to think about your nose, your mouth, your
Correct.
ears, and what you're feeling. And it's an awesome tool. And I usually also add like a little extra on there. So I do 5 cents check, and at the end, and I'm like, but how are you feeling emotionally? And I usually end it there. That's like the zero kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it really helps to kind of bring the attention back to what's going on inside of me. Where am I feeling those feelings? And at 11, 12-year-old was amazing at it. So if he was able to do it with WWE, all of the YouTube videos and all the stuff that he watches, um, we can all definitely do it. And that's something that I do all the time too. Like if I'm waiting in line and I'm like, oh, I'm not being present right now. I'm like, all right, this line gotta go. Come on, line. I'm like, all right, 5 cents check real quick. Let me bring it back to right now. What can I see? What can I smell? What can I taste? What can I hear? What can I feel? And what do I feel? It's a
Oh yeah.
great way to like really center yourself and bring it back, and that way you kind of forced to not worry about the past or the future. Time traveling is what I like to call that, and you can really bring your attention back to the present moment, because we can't really focus on more than one thing at a time. So if you have that structure
Not
and
truly.
yeah, not truly, exactly. Not you're not gonna be able to do it well. That's a really good way to get that going and just get that ball rolling. So that
Absolutely.
yeah, because meditation, like RJ said, is not just sitting down with for 15 minutes like in meditation stand. Like, and I do that. I got a meditation pillow and I do all of that. Yeah, it's not just that. It could also be a great mindfulness skill to bring our awareness back to the present moment, calm our nervous system down, and really just allow us to be, like you mentioned before. I think that's something
Yes.
really important that this this time that we're living in kind of pushes us to forget. We're so focused on
Oh
the
yeah.
future and the past that we have a hard time bringing our attention back to the now.
Oh
Um,
yeah, man. That's big. I would add one other thing, and it's funny how sometimes when you hear different things from different people, like you hear the same thing, but it's it's packaged differently, so to speak. But when you were mentioning that earlier, what I was gonna say is your 5 second check-in
mm,
or 5 cents check-in, excuse me. Um, it's essentially a grounding technique
mm,
that we would do, right? So if somebody comes in and they're about to have a panic attack, or they're in the
mm,
middle of a panic attack, right? Like you would do something like that to help ground them.
mm,
Tell me 5 things that you see in them around. Focus on your breathing. Maybe they even have like a watch. You have them checking their heart rate or checking their breathing rate at that time. You doing these different things to make them focus on themselves, because if they're anxious or they're having a panic attack, it's in anticipation of something, right? So they're fixated on that thing, and that's what's scaring them or stressing them or whatever. So you doing this mindfulness technique is forcing them to disassociate from that and focus on what you're saying. It's like, wait, listen to me, look at me. Focus on my mouth. Focus on
What
the
can
words
you
that I'm saying. Look in the room. Focus on these things in this room right now. And slowly you notice that their respiration rates come down
do?
because as you said, and it's true, you can't focus on two things at the same time. So if I'm sitting over here trying to focus on being afraid and you have my undivided attention because you're grabbing me, so to speak, not physically, but with your attention, and you're grabbing my attention, then you're forcing me to leave that and
Mm,
focus on this right here, which helps me to sort of calm down. So
mm,
again, that's a great grounding technique. And then again, overall, if you put it all together, it helps a lot to build up that patience skill,
mm,
which again, I think I don't care what your profession is, what your family dynamic is, we all get our patience tested every single day. Some of us more so than others. But the purpose is the more that I work on these types of skills, I'm actually building up my emotional resilience. So when negative things come my way, or if I have to deal with stuff that I wasn't expected to, instead of falling apart and being like, oh, life is too much, I can't deal with this, it helps me get the courage to keep going and find ways to solve these issues or address them, as opposed to running from them or pretending
mm.
that or feeling like the world is coming to an end. So let me just give up and not do anything.
Ooh. All right, just dropping gems. I see you. I see you, bro. That's what's up. I love
I'm
that.
playing off of you. I'm playing off of you.
We out here. I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, you're speaking facts. You're speaking facts. And I want to kind of briefly go over what you mentioned about anxiety attacks. Because I know even the data shows that they're on the rise. There's a lot of people in academia, people who are, working a lot of jobs. They're having hard
Yeah.
times with anxiety attacks and similar things like that. I honestly,
Yeah.
personally, I had my first one ever in my life last year when I was in my master's program. I did not like it, but I was lucky
Yeah.
enough that I had the tools and the skill set to like work through it, and
Mhm.
haven't had one ever since.
That's good. That's good.
Didn't have one before either, but do it when that time happens because you can't control it. Sometimes life can be challenging, but
Yes.
this is why we practice these skills so that when um, stuff hits the fan, let's keep it
Right.
PG.
Right.
You know how to manage that. Because when I first had it, one of the first things that I did was bring the attention back to my present moment. Because when we are having an anxiety attack, you are time traveling. There's no way that you're having an anxiety attack in our present. You're most
Right.
likely, when I say time traveling, I mean you're concerned about the future or worried about the past. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that. Usually, most of the times, the triggers are not anything that has to do with the present moment. Because you're in this fight or flight state, and everything around you is like chill. You're like, yo, you're in your room
Right.
right now.
It could be like you having one right now. You're looking around, and you're like, but everything's fine, but I don't feel fine. I gotta get my mind.
Your body's releasing all those chemicals. You're feeling your heart rate's going all over the place. Your breathing starts going really fast. And when we bring it back to the present moment, we can pay attention to that breathing. We can slow it down and remember that we do have control over it. It might be
Yeah.
challenging at first, but we do have the option and the opportunity to kind of slow down our breath. Try, and as we do that, it does become easier for us to slow down our heart rate, slow down our breathing, and kind of just gain clarity in our thoughts and let go of a lot
Yeah.
of thoughts that might not be serving us in the current situation that we're in. So
Absolutely.
as someone who has had an anxiety attack, I can assure you, um, it is not fun. It is not fun, but it is very common. And I've met a lot of people, especially in their 20s, who are having anxiety attacks and don't know how to go
Mm-hmm.
about it. It starts with those skills in that practice. Like we fall back to what we've been practicing on. So if you haven't practiced and you get hit with something challenging, it will be more challenging. But if you've been practicing, kind of preparing for any situation when the things do arise, then you have the skill sets to work through that and then overcome whatever the situation might be. That makes
Oh
sense.
yeah. No, it absolutely does. Actually, I like Parkour Vegan's comment because he made me think about an example in the gym. He was talking about fitness
Mm,
becomes easier too.
yeah.
I don't know if this is where they were going with it, but I had a thought in my mind when I read that about when you do like a slow burn workout. So you're not doing necessarily things for reps, but like you could be doing maybe like higher weight, or you could be doing lower weight, but you're doing it essentially just to get the burn. So in the moment, the thought is like, if like when you, for those who like have been in the gym before, if you tell somebody like, hey, yeah, we're gonna do complete burnout workouts today, so we're going to muscle failure. That's not an exciting premise for a lot of people. It's like, I have to, like, I don't want to go to fail because that, kind of sucks. It's like, yeah, it does, but to their point, which I hope I may be touching on, is the idea of getting used to dealing with that level of discomfort and learning how to persevere, right? So when we were talking earlier about the thoughts about the waves and the feelings sort of going by you, I can still have the negative thought. I can still have the negative feeling. I might grab onto it temporarily, but the idea is to let it go and then let it continue to move on. So if I'm in a moment and maybe like I'm doing a curl and I'm like, oh God, I want to let go, want to let go, want to let go. And you're like, you're slowly lowering it, right? It's getting used to that feeling like, oh, you know what? I was able to do that. I'm still here. My arms didn't fall off. They still work. And that's kind of remapping in our brains, maybe the idea of being willing to learn how to tolerate and deal with this level of discomfort. Again, the patience to even do that type of workout, because you got to be patient if you're even going to attempt to do that.
You gotta.
It's a very similar concept, almost like a parallel to a certain degree with meditation, because you've been saying it so many different ways today. It's about being in that moment and not really fixating on the past or the future, really just allowing ourselves to be in this moment. And it is easier sometimes to have gratitude because you are appreciative of the things you can do, like going to a gym, like moving your legs, like breathing freely, or whatever other things that you do or we at times take for granted. So I think it's interesting, that comment, because to me, I've seen it, like in my own life or when I, like work with training people before. And to me, there is absolutely a parallel between that and being more mindful when you practice meditation.
I agree. That's I love the fitness comparison. I read this book, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I don't know if you read it.
I haven't read it, but I definitely know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, he's awesome. But the man David Goggins, he went through like 2 hell weeks to become a SEAL, 3 hell weeks, I think. So hell week, it's a really intense fitness and mental challenge that you kind of have to do well in order to become a Navy SEAL. And one of the things that he was taught is that we fall back, like in really tough, stressful situations, we fall back down to the level of our training, right? So that meditation and practice is a training. It is like, if you haven't been practicing and something bad happens, you're gonna fall real hard. But if you're putting yourself to really, challenging meditations and things that push you to become better and more patient, when a situation arises that requires you to be patient, and you can, and you need to react because, we can train that reaction as well, then your first instinct is to fall back down to that practice, that training, that level of training that you've gotten. So if you've been practicing those coping skills, rather than immediately falling back to like, oh my God, and spiraling down and going worse, then your brain can fall back and be like, all right, I felt this before. What do we do when we're here? We're familiar. So it really that training is so important, because sometimes that reaction, it takes a little bit longer than we want, but if we continue to practice, when we, instead of responding right away, we can react appropriately right away. Not always, but sometimes the reaction can be helpful because our brains are really powerful tools, right? So when it comes to that meditation practice, remember that is really training for your brain. That is literally, you're lifting weights for your brain. It really is making your brain stronger, more flexible, more basically resilient to whatever situation might arise.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I figured I should share that, because I've heard that quote multiple times before. I just thought about it because I wanted to give people a resource to where to look for it.
Absolutely, that's smart. I would add one quick thing to that, because you brought up the mental side. I would say for mentally and emotionally, the resilience, right? When you were talking about how you approach situations. I'm gonna give you like the practical example of like how I approach situations, but what I notice so many people struggle to do. Like, and this is truly my day to day. Okay, I hear it whether it is you're in the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
you trying to get your car serviced at the car shop, you are waiting on a package. So many different examples. I sincerely mean this that I've experienced where people absolutely lose their mind, where they feel like the level sometimes of entitlement, like it should be here now.
Yep.
And so what I notice is I look at the reactions, right? I look at the visceral reaction, I look at the body language, all of that. I'm like, wow, like that's really intense. The reason why I'm trying to give you this example is it is an example of what can happen after you meditated for some time and you learn to kind of cool yourself down. You might notice, like I do, when you go through your day-to-day life, you might notice that other people jump at situations very, very quickly. And you might wonder why. I'm genuinely a naturally very, very curious person. So when things happen, whether it's a sensational piece of news content or a video that's trending or something that's happening outside of my house, my first thought and instinct isn't to necessarily go into fight. It's sort of curiously investigate. Why was that? This person just flipped out because they didn't get service in line next. I wonder why they did that. Instead of, you deserve to get thrown out of here.
Yeah.
You're a piece of crap for screaming. I'm like, I agree, your behavior should change. You should definitely consider working on that because it's not becoming of adults in particular. But instead of lashing out immediately, right, in sort of a reactionary feeling, my mind goes to, I wonder why they felt like that was the best way to handle that situation. You know? And I don't think that I could get to that point without doing things like meditating. Not that you have to do it necessarily every day, but in the beginning, you want to do it very consistently to get to a point where perhaps you're kind of flowing through life and you don't immediately get triggered or charged, or you get to the point where you abandon all your skills and you're ready to attack. Every single time you are perceiving something as being slighted. You're like, you know what? It's okay. It took me an extra 5 minutes. No big deal. This person flipped out. The people took care of them. It's no big deal. My package is a little delayed. It's no big deal. I don't need to be stressing constantly about all of these little things. So to me, that's a very practical example of how it could benefit you. If you do that type of practice, that type of mindfulness practice like we're talking about, and building out that skill and that set of patience, it can benefit us so much in our day-to-day life, where it just gets a little bit easier to deal with sometimes some of the nonsense, let's be real, unnecessary drama that might fall your way. So I just wanted to really emphasize that point.
I love that. I love that. I love that a lot. I 100% am very similar to you and the fact that I'm very inquisitive and I want to know more about the why, or where is that coming from when I see situations like that. And also kind of just keeping it real and knowing that I also have situations like that where I overreact or get impatient. But I fall back to that practice, and I can remind myself like, hey, you're good. I think the other day, I was trying to, I was doing some work on my phone or something like that. And I remember it was taking longer than I expected. And I was like, why is this taking so long? And then I'm like, yo, like, let it go to space and come back to you. Give it a second. give it a second. And like, kind of falling back into that gratitude again, right? There's so many times when we're upset like that, like, oh, you take your car to the shop and they're taking forever. Well, you know, if you're grateful enough, you're like, oh, I have the opportunity to bring my car to a shop. I have a car. I have thoughts. I can think. Like, all this, you can find a million things to be grateful for, and that allows you to kind of come back to the present moment and like calm yourself down as well.
Yeah.
You know, because nowadays, especially with technology, like you said, there's so much entitlement. They're like, oh my God, I downloaded this and it's taking more than 5 seconds. How dare it? And it's like, it's about.
Listen, man, that could probably be a whole video series, like in and of itself, man. Because I'm telling you, as somebody, because if it wasn't for social media and that type of technology, like that's what really makes me feel old. Yeah, it really makes me feel old and it's not because of the content solely. It's more because of how it shaped the way people's behavior is.
Mm,
Like, I really hope people understand that, like, if you're watching this now or you watch this on a recording, I really hope you understand this point. It's not about, like, I'm not anti Reels or TikTok or any other short form content. I'm not anti it, right?
mhm.
It has its place.
Yep.
But what I will tell you, I have noticed, because I work not only with young people, but I have a fair amount on my caseload that are young, and I have over my career. You start to notice the way that their behavior and their attitude is towards life.
Mm,
It's just very different, man. They're used to the world is a buffet for them.
yeah.
And they can pick and choose whatever they want, and they can throw it away and pick something up at any moment in time. They can do that. I didn't grow up that way. I grew up going to the library. We didn't Google. This is before the internet was really popping, and we were using the AOL disc. You actually had to go to the library. You actually had to read encyclopedias. So you had to be patient because you had to get in the car to go drop to the library to go read the book. But you can Google everything now.
Immediately have your
And again, I'm not anti-Google, but again, I'm just trying to drive the point home. The way that people see and they view all this content, what I believe is happening, it's shortening not only their attention span, but their patience. And the fact that their patience is so short, it's making it very difficult for them to navigate day-to-day life in some cases, because they expect things, like we were talking about a second ago, so rapidly.
Mm,
And when it doesn't come through, oh, the world is trying to screw me over. No, it's not. It's not. It's just life, man. Sometimes stuff happens,
yep.
no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could, again, not trying to oversell meditation, but I think that is such an added benefit. If you want more peace in your life, if you find that you're a very stressed out person often, for anybody who's listening, I think you could greatly benefit if you chose to set aside some time, like Carlos has been saying, to really just focus on yourself and be present. And the added benefit is maybe you decide that you like more long form content, or you like to you actually watch things till they conclude instead of jumping all the time, because you're okay with letting things play out. Maybe in your day-to-day life when you're running errands, you're less stressed out, you're less irate. Maybe when you're traveling to and from work, you're not getting pissed off at every red light that you run into, or getting road rage because somebody cut you off. It just gets easier to flow through things, is the point I'm trying to make here. So I'll get off my soapbox on that.
No, I love it. I'm literally living for this. Like I'm noticing how you're putting an emphasis on our I ams. Like the word I am is so powerful. And when we do things like this, where I am the kind of person who watches something from the beginning to end. I am the kind of person who is patient. I am whatever that might be. This is a great way to practice that, to really embody that, and that helps your brain to know what kind of person you are so that you can behave accordingly. This is just really good practice. And I'm loving it. You're just speaking facts. Like that's how powerful this stuff is. Like it really allows you to shape and change your identity. Like truly you can. And yeah, so I want to leave it there. I think that's really powerful stuff that we dropped on there. I have a couple episode ideas just from this call. I have to jump on for sure. But if you're watching this, if you joined us live, thank you very much. If you're watching the recording, definitely, like we've said before in the past, take your time to digest the information that we break down here. Definitely pull out a journal and take notes on stuff that stands out to you. Try out some of the things that we said. Like I mentioned, that it's important for you to try different things out to see what works for you and what doesn't, right? So I have two challenges for you guys. So if you're new, if you've never meditated before, start with a 5-minute guided meditation. Just go on YouTube, literally just go YouTube 5-minute mindfulness meditation. Try it out. Literally look at the thumbnail. Don't even focus too much about what it is. Just try it out. This one calls my attention. Just click it, sit down with it and listen to it, practice it, see how you feel, and then maybe you could try a little bit of a longer one, but start with 5 minutes. If you have been meditating for a long time, if you've done a lot of meditation for a long time, you can meditate for 2-3 hours. Awesome, good for you. Big props. But I would even challenge you to try something new, try something different. play around, see if you like something else. Because that, again, that builds that repertoire. That allows you to have flexibility in different situations and be able to kind of give your brain that flexibility when it comes to handling different situations. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
definitely that will be my challenges for you guys. But I do want to thank you, RJ, for jumping on here, pouring into our community and really helping shine light on such a powerful coping skill that I believe that will help a lot of our community, especially Black and brown men,
Oh yes.
heal
Oh
and
yes.
improve. So thank you so much, bro. I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. No, thank you for having me, man. I didn't know exactly how we were gonna take all this, but you're right, man. It's the patience is one of those things, again, especially with the young ones. It's so important, man. I see it so often, and and then I hear it, man. And again, it makes me recognize how critical of a skill that it's not being prioritized.
Mhm.
And I hope that we can emphasize it more here, and especially for anybody who's listening to this or watching this. Like, I hope you gather something from this. I think we dropped a lot of good information of things you can try and implement.
Mhm. Mhm.
So please do. And, I hope that everybody has a good rest of their day, and we'll catch you on the next one.
For real. Thank you. Thank you. See you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you, RJ, for sure. See you guys in the next one.